It's time for Law in Our Life, and as usual, that means we have Hyunjoo here in our studio. Hello, Hyunjoo.
Hi, hello.
How are you doing?
Good, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm a little surprised. You're wearing short sleeves, and it is February.
Yes, right.
It's chilly. I mean, I always wear, short sleeves, and people think I'm crazy, but that's because I'm from Canada, so good for you. It is warm here in the studio.
Yes, right.
It makes sense. Okay. Now, with all seriousness, you are a lawyer here in Gwangju, right?
Yes.
And you're going to let us know about some of the legal system. And I guess this is a pretty popular topic because we did 2 weeks of this already. But then you got a bunch of questions, right?
Right.
And what kind of people were asking you questions?
Yes. After the last 2 shows, I received many questions about the housing lease contract. Some of them were tenants who had issues with their landlord and wanted to clarify their understanding about the new law.
Sure. Well, it's good to know if you're being taken advantage of or if what's happening is legal, even if it doesn't seem fair. So what kind of things were the issues that people had?
First, I found that many were confused about the exercise of the right to request the renewal of the lease contract and find the difference between that and just resigning the contract itself.
Okay.
Basically, at the end, the tenant can still live in the place, but how you do it can be different. Those who are confused are not only you, listeners, but many Koreans are also confused about this term.
Right. Well, I was confused when you were describing it. It's complex.
Yes. So let's put it this way. The tenants may stay in the house another 2 years, but how they can make it happen can be different.
Okay.
So they can renew it by exercising their right, or they can just resign the contract, like a new contract.
Right.
How you deal with it can affect how much the landlord can increase in rent.
And let's assume that our listeners, if they're renters, want to try and pay the lowest rent possible.
Yep.
So you're actually going to be kind of giving a bit of advice here, I think,
Sure.
because you're going to be telling people how to avoid letting their landlord increase the rent.
Yeah.
So why don't you take us back to a couple weeks ago?
Sure, we talked about it already, but for those who missed the last 2 weeks' show, I will give a brief introduction of the revised Housing Lease Act.
Okay.
The Housing Lease Act was revised last year, and one thing to notice is that there is a right to request the renewal of the lease contract. So if you exercise that specific right, you can renew the contract even against the landlord's will, except under certain circumstances.
Right. So even if the landlord is like, no, I don't really like renting to you, I want you to leave, you have the right to sign one more time.
Yes.
Okay.
And the landlord cannot increase the rent or key money by more than 5%.
Okay, give us an example.
For example, if you exercise the right to request the renewal of the lease contract at the end of your current lease and successfully renew the contract.
Okay.
In that case, the landlord cannot increase the rent or key money by over 5%. If the landlord tries to increase the rent or key money more than 5%, in case you exercise that specific right, it would be a void contract since that provision is mandatory legal provision.
Okay.
However, the caveat is that it is a right. So you as a tenant may want to use it or may not want to use it. So it's up to you.
Okay.
So in the case you do not exercise this right and just resign a contract with the landlord, like you sign a new contract rather than renewing the old one,
all right,
then the landlord can increase the rent over 5% or as much as the parties agree.
All right. My question is why?
Yeah.
Why would we want that?
So why people do not use it and just resign a contract by agreement and let the landlord increase the rent, like, for example, 10%.
Sure.
Well, some may want to stay in the place without exercising that right for a while and may want to reserve that right to request the renewal of the contract for the next time.
Okay.
It is because you cannot exercise this right to request a renewal of the lease contract over and over.
Oh, all right. It's a one-shot deal.
Yes.
All right.
You can use it only once.
Okay.
So many people want to keep a chance to use it when they really want to.
Right. It's your silver bullet that'll guarantee you one more renewal of your contract.
Yes. Because when a tenant exercises this powerful right, they can renew the contract unless some exceptions, such as the landlord himself or like his son or his parents will move into that place.
Okay.
Therefore, in theory, it's possible for the landlord to increase the rent over 5% if you agree.
Right, because you're not using that right.
Right. So, if you want to prevent the landlord from increasing the rent more than 5%, then you can exercise your right to request the renewal of the lease contract.
Okay.
However, like after those 2 years of the renewed term that you may gain by exercising that right, as you already used your right to request the renewal of the lease contract, like after those like a renewed term, if the landlord refuses to rent the place to you any longer, then you may have to leave the place.
Right, because they've used that clause now.
Right. Or even after that additional 2 years and you really like the place, so you really want to stay there, then the landlord will not be bound by the 5% rule any longer.
Ah, so they might raise it even more.
Yep, because at this time you are not exercising your right to request the renewal of the lease contract.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, because it's already used.
Right. All right, I think I got it. So, like, I would think unless you love your place and you want to keep like reserve that chance.
Yeah.
Unless like you really feel strongly about it, I think it'd be probably better if they suggested increasing it more than 5%, like say 10%. I'd say no, use your option. Lock it at 5%. And give yourself 2 years to find somewhere that you like more.
Yep.
Like, because who knows, you could not use it, let them increase it by 10%. Then when they go for 10% again, you say, no, I'm going to use my option. They could say, oh, just kidding, I'm going to have my kid move in there.
Yeah, that's possible.
And
but
do something like that.
Yes. As I said, if they're just lying that their kids or parents will come in for that place, if it's revealed, then there will be some like penalty for them.
Yeah, but I think there's ways to get around that.
Yeah, sure, maybe.
You know,
there will be some people who are trying to do that.
Those landlords, they can be sneaky. I don't mean to disparage landlords, but I think, I mean, come on, it's capitalism, right? So, I guess they're not bound. If you do leave, they can raise it as much as they want, right?
Right.
Like there's no rent controls.
No. Yeah. So many find it very problematic. Yeah, it's a law. So you should be wise to decide when to use it.
Sure.
And as you said, also the landlord is not bound by how much he got from the previous tenant.
Okay.
So let's say the previous tenant had paid 300,000 won per month as a rent.
Right.
And he left. The tenant left. So now the landlord is looking for a new tenant. In this case, he's not bound by the previous 300,000 won rent.
Not at all?
No.
They can just double it, triple it, whatever they want. Yes,
the landlord has freedom to decide the rent as they want based on the market price.
Right.
If he has like too high rent, then the place would not be rented out.
Sure. Well, I mean, I understand because that's opportunity cost now, right?
Sure.
Like right now, the price of real estate is going up and up and up. And so when you own a property, you can think, okay, do I want to rent it out or do I want to sell it and invest that money?
Yep.
And so if your value is going up of your place, then the amount that you could get if you invested is going up and up and up too. And so naturally you're going to say, all right, well, I'm going to sell it unless I can get higher rent.
That's possible.
Otherwise, I'm leaving money on the table.
Right. But there is also an issue, like the tax issue in Korea.
Right. They're changing that. So, well, and that also gives an incentive sometimes for them to sell the property as well. Like that's how I bought my apartment.
Oh.
It was right. They changed the tax basically. And the person who owned the apartment I have now owned several.
Oh, yeah, right.
And they had to sell them at the same time.
Right, right.
And so it was a pretty good price.
Sure.
Because they were trying to get rid of it like within a month.
Yeah, back then there was time, and now it's very hard to like get the loans because of new restrictions.
Yeah, they're making it a little harder.
So,
the mortgage stuff in of itself, I mean, we don't talk about that. We talk about the law.
Yeah, right.
But like you lived in the States, so you must know like in the States, you can get a house like 10% down, 5% down. Here in Korea, it's 30%.
It's almost impossible.
Home. Yeah, it's a huge amount of money.
Right.
I was really surprised by that when I found out.
Yeah, so many people relied on 전세 or 월세 for a long time.
So many renters, like what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. And with the new law, people thought it would be nice because they can be protected from the high increase of rent.
Yeah,
but
just once.
Yeah, just once.
For 2 years.
Yes, and the tenant might suffer higher increase of rent that they avoided successfully for the last 2 years.
Right, yeah. Down the road, they're going to raise the rent.
Right.
So you're probably going to have to move anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you're going to put this up on the internet, right?
Sure. You can find this segment in video and my YouTube channel. You can find me by searching Korean Law 101 on YouTube.
All right. Thank you so much, Hyunjoo.
Thank you for having me.